This is your stuff.
Oh, this is my stuff.
Okay. Tell us about it.
All right. So basically, the way GreenGro was founded was I studied archaeology and Native American agriculture. So I studied how other cultures across the world in space and in time approached the topic of agriculture. Sumerians, Egyptians, Chinese, North American Native Americans, South American Native Americans, Mayans. So that's through an anthropological lens is how I discovered what I wanted to do. So I am not. I mean, I know a little OChem, okay. I know a little biology, but that's not where the focus comes from. This stuff. This comes from building on ancient knowledge, accepting that they knew more than we did, which most people don't want to do today, but I like to accept that our elders tend to know a lot more than we give them credit for. And so by jumping into that as a life philosophy is where we come to GreenGro. So we're bringing up old styles of agriculture. Some of them are older than others. The Earthshine product is the oldest, one of the oldest in terms of the Americas. So it's a cultured and fermented biochar, which is what the natives did. They knew the power of harnessing biochar, but they knew not to use it by itself. They knew that you had to like activate it, energize it, make it so that it was whole, and then you add it to your soil. So we'll get to that in a little bit. All of our products contain mycorrhizae or beneficial bacteria. Ancient cultures utilized beneficials. They didn't really know the terminology of it. They just knew that composting and compost piles and fermenting, that those, like fermenting ancient grains is a big process. You know, the wine, when you made wine back in the day, you take the fermented, not the grape husks, but the seeds and the skins, right? And that would be then incorporated back into the soil and things like that. So they didn't know that there was biology in there, breaking it down and supercharging that and turning it into carbon, but they knew that they were on the right track. So that's kind of how the line was invented. We just kind of take one step at a time. We have a new product that we'll be releasing next year that we can't talk too much about, but I discovered a really old Sumerian style of infusing purified water to grow vegetables, which they use. So we're going to be trying to bring that back to life. It's tricky, right? Because keeping things stable. Things like plastic bottles actually take the energy out of what we're trying to do. So we have to find a stabilized container like a ceramic or a certain type of metal container to do that. So that'll be next year. So right now we're focusing on everything's biologically enhanced. Everything is enhanced with biochar. The top dress amendments are specifically turn of the century for sure. Like in the 1800s, 1700s, this is how you'd farm. You'd use top dress amendments or amending the soil techniques. And we got away from that in like the 20s, 30s, 40s, and then we really got away from it in the turn of the century ag after World War II with the chemical revolution. Right. The green revolution, as it was called for some reason, right? So let's get started. Basically, we are definitely missing a few products here, but...
What am I missing?
Did I sell Mycorrhizae?
Do you sell it here?
I don't know if it's not sold here.
Okay, I don't know if we have that on the shelf yet. Okay. So you go, I'll get it all here. Okay, so I'll go and make it happen, but I don't have it here.
Samples?
We have the sample.
That's the red label one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. He has all samples over there.
It's not a sample, that one, I don't think.
I don't see it.
Yeah. I let you down there.
These two guys let me down. I'm just kidding. So let's start somewhere. So let's start with our veg food, okay? So if you guys haven't grabbed a catalog yet, you can grab a catalog, follow along. So we're going to skip the really important first two pages and go to... We're going to go towards the back to start. So our veg food is considered a top dress amendment, an all-in-one amendment. A preparation is another word for it. You can prepare the soil with it. So it combines 18 different dry amendment ingredients, and dry amendments can be as simple as, okay, fish meal, fish bone, blood, alfalfa, feather, seabird guano, rock dust, kelp meal, and humic acid. So we have about 18 different amendments in there, including beneficial bacteria, mycorrhizae, and biochar. So you can't just take a shotgun of all these things and blast them together in a formula and expect it to work. I mean, that's been done a lot in this industry. There's been some dry amendment fertilizers thrown out there that have been around for 30, 40 years, and they work pretty good. But to get high performance, you have to organize the ingredients in order of the concentrations, and unfortunately for me, the most expensive ingredients have to go first. So, the seabird guano, the fish meal, blood meal, bat guano, mycorrhiza, and seaweed. Those all have to kind of be front-loaded into these to get the performance you're looking for. You also need to micronize them in different ways. You need to do a granular, a ground, like a medium grind and a fine grind. It's going to provide a slow, medium, and fast chain release throughout the season. So it's how it releases. It's not necessarily about NPK as much as what's contained in that NPK. The amino acid profiles, the protein profile, which proteins and amino acids have a very nice chain, right? Branched chain amino acids come from protein. So something has to break that down. So what we're utilizing, since we're assuming that everyone's soil is barren, is we're putting beneficials in here. We're putting mycorrhiza in here, and we're trying to make sure there's a plant response immediately so that the plant starts culturing this bacteria and this mycorrhizae in the soil, so that you're not continually just having to always add more throughout the course of your garden's life. We want to make a 20-year garden available in under 5. So to do that, we have to rebuild the soil biology, rebuild the carbon cycle. The carbon and nitrogen cycling has to get into perfect balance, If one's off, something is not going to happen good, So in this veg food, we're making it so that you only have to either top dress once a week or once every 10 days, depending on what strain we're working with. If we're working with cannabis, if we're working with vegetables, it's only once every 2 weeks because they have a little bit less of a nutrient demand. But with cannabis, once every week is a good place to start. And then you can also mix it into a tea. So when you're mixing this into a tea, you need to consider what components you're putting into a tea. And you would always want to put it into some kind of sock or some type of extraction device, because you're going to have, again, the fat, the different fineness, the different, like mesh sizes of each ingredient. You don't want that floating to the top. So, but you can get away with this veg food. You can get away with doing a top dress once a week and a tea once a week, and that could be as simple as your fertilizing program is, and a very, very effective one at that. I always recommend to make your tea be the centerpiece of your garden, because your tea is what unlocks everything. So if you can make a tea that is intelligently designed and you're not using chlorinated water with, that's an A+ in my book. So we want to stay away from all types of chlorinated, fluorinated, or water that has heavy copper boron in it. There's a few different metals that can be toxic to the growth of microbes or impede the growth. So we want to use purified water with this. I have another way.
Those two.
Oh, sweet. See, you came through. We'll talk about that later, guys. This is our beneficials here. So for the veg food, if you want to be a really lazy gardener, and I shouldn't say this, but I am, because I'm traveling a lot and my wife doesn't have the green thumb that I have, I just pre-amend the veg and the Earthshine into our soil. So before the season starts or before the cycle starts, I amend the veg into the soil. So if I get something simple, say it's a pro mix, for example, I'll take a yard of soil and I'll mix in 10 pounds of veg, 5 pounds of Earthshine, and then I'll transplant with the granular mycorrhizae. Once you saturate the soil profile, the plant has everything that it needs, as long as you're feeding it the compost teas, to take you through, all the way through veg and into bloom. So that's a lazy way to garden, because you're not always touching it, and it's really hard for me because I want to look at them, I want to touch them, I want to foliar them, I want to do whatever, right? But if you want to have a simple way to grow, it is possible to only do something once a week to your plants or less. And that's what this veg and this Earthshine really unlocks for the grower, is it helps put the garden on autopilot in a way that's not scary, and in a way that is still providing tremendous amounts of nutrition and mineralization to the plants. Does anyone have any questions on the veg food in terms of like how it's done, why it's done?
When you do the teas, would you consider doing like a casting compost brew and then add that to it, or just you can do it by yourself?
Flip to the back page here. This is the 2 teas I recommend, and these are quick and dirty teas. You know, there's so many beautiful ways to make a tea, but I wanted to standardize it from what's available across North America, because not every ingredient is available that we have on this West Coast to make these beautiful teas. So it's like we want to make sure that there's something that anyone could use anywhere in the country. So your microbial tea is going to be your base, right?
Right.
And then you can add to that the way you want to.
Yeah, that's what it's basically. Cool.
And you guys can pull, there's products that Culture Biologics has that you can add in here. You can supercharge the tea that way to start, and then add in our stuff to make the nutrified tea. There's a million ways to do this. We just want to make sure the biology is in place.
Right.
And then if you look at the veg food, I mean, you can see that there's beneficials listed here.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the mycorrhizae, I mean, when you're checking per gram, because mycorrhizae is usually in concentrate check per gram, you're not going to see huge numbers here, because if I were to put half this bucket of mycorrhizae, you guys wouldn't want to buy it. It'd be $300-$400, right? So we're putting about 2 pounds of mycorrhizae per bucket of fertilizer, which is 35 pounds, which is still very generous.
Yeah.
We probably have the highest concentration of mycorrhizae for a top dress on the market currently, just so everyone gets an idea of what's out there. And then we look at how the biochar enhances this formula. There's not very many top dresses that have biochar in it, because people don't understand the carbon and nitrogen cycling ratios. A lot of biochar companies, because they're selling biochar for a living, they say, oh, you need up to 20% in your soil. Well, what they don't tell you is that would screw your soil, because your nitrogen cycling would be off for years to come. And you can't take that out. Once you put the carbon in, you can't take it out. It's not like the plant just sucks it up through the roots, So we put in the appropriate amount of carbon, as we've discovered, found in soils across the world, including South America. So you want to have about 2 to 3% carbon in your soil maximum. So you have to make that ratio in here, so when you're fertilizing, you never go over that. See here, so we have, what's notable here is even in our veg food, we have a pretty decent calcium and calcium and magnesium ratio and sulfur.
7.8%.
Yeah, and so where we get that is that we really believe in, I think Scott from Enter the Gods, he's a big fan of calcium too, and we've talked about it in the past. We just believe in diversity. I mean, calcium can come in so many different forms, and so we have oyster shell that has great calcium in it. We have dolomite. We have fish bone meal. We have crab meal. We have bone meal. So so there's 5 sources of calcium in this product, and there's probably trace amounts of calcium in a lot of other products. The ingredients that are in here too, but we have 5 major sources of calcium, and they're diverse, and each one of them is milled to a different spec.
All 5 are in that product?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yep.
Cool.
So that's kind of the gist on the veg food. The veg food, you'll notice that when you're using our veg food, it's called the GreenGro's characteristic look. Your plants typically tend to have a dark blue hue to them. It's very characteristic of these ingredients, the Earthshine and the veg food being combined together. It's a really weird, it's just everywhere I go in the country, it's blue-green, like dark blue-green. Even in flower, most, by the time you get to flower, like towards the end, you have leaves dropping off, they're yellow. My plants are deep dark blue-green when I harvest them. And I've stopped giving it the Earthshine, I've stopped giving it the veg weeks and weeks prior to that, and it just, So, it's not bad. We get increased oil content in our plants. Our terpene profile has been charted as some of the best terpene profiles ever created. But everyone can say that, so I want you to believe in me, and I want you guys to try the products and understand what we're talking about. Because without trying, I'm just a sales asshole up here, So moving to the bloom food, what we did is we changed the ratios around in order to kind of just get higher levels of phosphorus, calcium. I mean, you can see in this one is 13% calcium, 1% magnesium, and that's just natural. There's no spikes or anything in there. That's all natural, how we release that. The phosphorus, you guys might note that is 5.5. It's closer to 6, but for state reasons we have to go down.
Of course.
The reason why we don't have a calcium load that's really high up there, or a phosphorus load that's really high up there, is because as someone that grows mycorrhizae for a living, you're just going to shut down the mycorrhizae when you get above 7 or 8. You know what I mean? Like you start impeding the growth. Anything above 10, your mycorrhizae is just on welfare. They're just done. They're like they're not having to do anything. They're just sitting there. They're not helping the plant. They're just like kicking it. So phosphorus is the one thing that mycorrhizae is intended. I mean, one of many things, but that's one of their jobs. Their primary job is to help fix that. And if they're not doing that, the plant's getting it for free. The plant's not going to feed the mycorrhizae the sugar that they need to live. So they're going to go into dormancy, or they're going to die off. So when people ask you, well, in my formula I have a 0.15 something, right? Well, cool. Let's not use mycorrhizae with that then. Right. Or hey, I have a 0.1510 and it's chock full of mycorrhizae. Well, that tells me that they don't really know what they're talking about.
We see that a lot. It's one of the huge common misconceptions I think right now.
Yep.
Glad we're educating people, slowly about that.
Well, you got some companies out there that are on fire right now on Instagram, and they have supplements for flower hardening that's a 0.50/30, and then they have that mycorrhizae tea that they say to use once a week with it too, and you're like, what?
Right.
So I don't know. Anyways, people do different things.
Cells, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's NPK is all it is. We're going to move next to our flower hardener, because that's a good transition right there. Most flower hardeners you see out there, 0.50/30 or something of that nature, which means the phosphorus and potassium loads are just off the charts. And they're meant to just punch the plant to like produce the flowers and finish. It's kind of like also a death blow to the plant. It's like, hurry up and finish because you're not going to live much longer. Right. You know what I mean? With these salt levels. So you notice some plants that have been treated with those things, the characteristic is you have these nice big fat like flowers that are hard, but all the leaves are dead, dying, falling off yellow, okay? Because it's locking out all the other nutrients at that point.
Right.
So it's all it can do. And people for some reason think that plants don't need nitrogen in the bloom cycle, which I don't know where that came from, but nitrogen is necessary for all life, and specifically for the flowering cycle. So, and even in our flower finisher, we have a little bit of nitrogen in there, just a little bit, just a kiss, right? Because it's already gotten a bunch from these guys.
Right.
So, we're the only that I know of flower hardener on the market that is natural and organic, and it's comprised of over 18 ingredients. Most flower hardeners are 1 or 2 ingredients. If they're organic, I think there's only 2 organic on the market actually right now. Or they're chemical, right? So there's 0.50/30, there's Bloombastic, there's Moab, you guys know them all. Anything that, spikes it. So our flower finisher is comprised of trace and colloidal elements. I'm digging way back to the ancient ancestors again. We're taking certain types of clay minerals and rock structures and clay matrices, and we're micronizing them very fine. Zeolite, ionized zeolite, we're micronizing that. We're taking silicon dioxide from ancient tuft, we're micronizing that. We're doing 4 phosphorus solubilizing bacteria. We're doing micronized like monatomic biochar. We're doing a lot of the basic same amendments, but we micronize them into a really fine level at that point. So, cobalt, zinc, manganese, all the stuff that we know we need in trace amounts in our lives and the plants need. And the calcium load again is nice and tight. Yeah. So, this is water. You just mix it into water. You mix it into tea. If you really want to top dress it, you can. It won't burn anything. But a lot of people like the fact that you can mix this into water or tea. And it's super concentrated. I mean,
most 1 teaspoon down, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, and the price point, it goes a long way. A 10-pounder of this stuff's going to treat a 30-plant garden in 200-gallon smart pots.
Yeah.
So, and for $200 treating 30 huge plants is so much cheaper than the traditional flower hunters in the market, and the taste is there at the end.
Right.
So the plants get hard, right? The leaves are still green for some reason, and it tastes good. That's what we're looking for. So this one's kind of a fusion. The flower finisher is a fusion of ancient techniques, turn of the century techniques, using our modern advanced understanding of milling, monatomic things, and beneficial microbes. So it's kind of the fusion of all generations in this product. So this would be the link between what we're all trying to do.
Yeah.
Now it says on the foliar, when would you suggest to start? Would you suggest do it the whole cycle, or just before the flower transition?
Well, foliar, I mean, so when we say in here to use the last 4 weeks of flower, I mean, when it comes to foliar, you can start earlier. You can probably start like week 1, week 2 of flower and have no problem. There's a lot of guys that are just ninjas at foliaring. They can foliar the last week and have no problems, no mold mildew, no burning, any of that stuff, you know. It all depends on what system you have, what your lights are, if you're outdoors, if you have a strain that can push. That's a huge thing.
Sure.
Some strains can't push, so and there's some finicky strains. And being in Oregon for the last month, I've found some strains that I've never seen before that are unique.
Yeah.
So you guys have different constraints that I haven't grown with yet. I'm gonna start, but
We'd love to play with them for you.
yeah, exactly.
A lot of
So-
genetics out there.
yeah, so, that being said, is there anyone else that has questions about the flower finisher and how it can work?
There was a question, speaking more on phosphorus and mycorrhizae relationship. Clarify it in simpler terms, what's the do's and don'ts? I mean,
Too much phosphorus in a grow is going to impede the mycorrhizal production in terms of what they can do for the plant, and then it can also stop the mycorrhizae from growing, make them dormant, or it can kill them depending on how much phosphorus and potassium are combined. You know, see, salt-based chemical fertilizers dehydrate the microbes and dehydrate the mycorrhiza. So a lot of these 0, 50, 30 chemicals, right? So it's 0 nitrogen, 50 parts phosphorus, 30 parts potassium or potash, whatever you want to call it, that's just a salt punch to the face of the plant's roots. Like, the microbes are just like, I'm done. I'm walking. They drop the mic, they're out, because they're just like, what am I going to do here? Everything's already solubilized for the plant. Everything they have is here. I have no role.
Right.
And it's not a hospitable environment for me, so I'm going to go somewhere else, or I'm just going to die. You know, so that's more so about it. We can get more into like those kind of talks too later. This is kind of a broad stroke, but I mean, phosphorus can be really good for us, and it can be really bad for us. Just like anything, it all depends on how much we're using, how much we're consuming. It's all in moderation. And the problem is with this world right now, this whole entire world, is that we use phosphorus as just throw it at the plant, ag everywhere in the world. And phosphorus is a depleting resource. It's not a renewable resource for the most part, the way that agriculture uses it, because it's mined. So we need to reduce the amount of phosphorus that we add, and we need to make sure that the plant can get phosphorus through the microbes breaking things down and feeding to the plant. It's more important that way. So hopefully
thank you.
So flower finisher. So next we're gonna go on to the Earthshine, which is gonna be right here. This one. The Earthshine is one of, again, my favorite products. It's one of the first products I ever formulated just after I just finished the University of California. The Earthshine is, I can't take full credit for it. This is a distillate of what we found in South America. The Native Americans had soil that's called terra preta. It's like black gold, right? The soil is so fertile, so black, so rich, and yet it's so perfect that it's not locking anything out. You can grow anything in it almost. I mean, it's really rich. And the curious part is, in most cases, the terra preta soils haven't been touched in 500 years. So they haven't been touched by the Native Americans, that were in that area for 500 years. So what they call it in anthropological, it's called an anthropocentric soil or anthropological soil. It means it's something that humans cultured, so humans created by living around that area, you know, by living and breathing and doing agriculture, they created this soil, they affected this soil, right? So what they did back in the day is that this is around the Amazonian basin. It was done a bunch of other places. This is just the most famous that people Google all the time. So it's the easiest place for them to find material on Google to verify what I'm saying. But they had hardwoods. Everyone knows that Brazilian has great hardwoods. Everywhere in that region has great hardwoods, right? And so hardwood makes the best biochar. So they started it because they had hardwoods, and so what they do is they do some charring of the hardwoods. They try to grind it up if they could. One of the crops that they grew down there was soybeans. So and they used compost because their trash piles or rubbish piles, we called them. Anthropology was compost piles essentially, right? They ate fish, they ate this, that, and the other. Throw it in the compost pile, you know. And then if they were a culture that would have a spring and a fall dwelling, you know, before they left in the fall, they would mix the remnants of their crop with the biochar and the compost, till them into the soil. They come back, let the rains wash on it and do its composting in the soil. And then by the time they get back to plant, they turn their soil over and it's beautiful. There's worms in there, there's everything in there, right?
Oh man.
Yeah, just naturally, right when you turn it over. So what you saw in this product is that we couldn't take that soil from there because that would have been horrendous, like an environmental issue. So we're like, how do we manufacture this ecologically friendly and sell it in mass quantities in the United States? So we looked at, okay, hardwood biochar. What do we have up here in California and Oregon? We have oak and we have redwood, right? So we combine whatever the chars we can get. We make sure it's low ash content, just like they did. We get oak and redwood biochar. You mix that together, or you just get oak, whatever you have available to you, right?
Sure.
You make sure that it's been rinsed. It's cold water rinsed before it's ground down. Get the ash content out. Make sure there was a slow burn, 24 to 48 hours, not instantly done like charcoal. Everyone always asks me, was there into this? Can I just go get charcoal and throw it in my garden? No, please don't do that, because there's like binders in that. There's chemicals in that. There's so much bad stuff. Please don't do that. And I'll get this question after this. Don't go to your fireplace and dig out that stuff and throw it in your garden and think it's cool, because there's a lot of ash in there, and that ash can be ruining to your soil too. So,
It's like a slow char process then?
Slow char.
Right.
Slow
I've seen
char.
some cool documentaries on how they make their charcoal abroad, in other countries.
Well, yeah, I mean, slow char is a good way to do it. I mean, what we use is waste stream, which is great, right? Because all of the sawmills used to just throw all their stuff out into like a pond, like or whatever, So like, their wood shavings or wood chips would go into a pond or just throw it in a field or something, right? Sequester a lot of nitrogen. So they use the wood chips now, and they make the biochar of it, which is great. So it gives us a nice medium to start with, and it's good quality wood.
Do you guys find a difference in the end product as far as the inputs in the beginning, or is it's just carbon at the end?
Well, there's some things, how much sap was in that tree can really affect that. How much ash tells me if that tree had consistent growth over a long period of time. So there's not like these big fluffy gaps in the tree rings, I'm not obviously a dendrochronological expert, but dendrochronology is something that I did study, and the tree rings are made from, you can see how good that year was, and it's a record in time.
Yeah.
So a consistently grown tree, like a consistent record, would be better. Stressful years on a tree or a plant, or you can tell if there was bark thrown into your mix too, because bark doesn't really make good biochar. So something, if you see a carbon analysis, just ask for it for any biochar someone's trying to sell you. It says, tell them, say, give me the carbon analysis. If they won't, probably you shouldn't buy their biochar. But it'll say, here's the carbon analysis, here's the ash content. You want to make sure your ash content is fairly low. You can't make sure it's completely gone, because that's really hard to do. But I mean, something less than 8% would be great.
Okay. Cool.
So So you can see from the ingredients list from the story we told about the Amazonian culture, we tried to emulate that by putting soybean meal, protein, amino acids, worm castings, because that's what's naturally there doing all the work, right? Trace minerals, because they were in a basin right there, right? And they just happen to have some really good mineralization in their soil. I'm not sure if it ran off the mountainsides there, or if it was just because that deciduous forest that was there for so long just cycled the minerals that way. Yeah. But when they cleared it and then they did their agriculture, the minerals content was just crazy. So the microbes went nuts on it. So we looked at what was in the soil. There's mycelium galore in the soil. You know what I mean? Mushrooms would be popping out everywhere. Yeah. The moment stuff would get in there, be like any dead matter would be gone in a matter of weeks or months, right? Saprocytic bacteria.
Sure, yeah.
So what do we do for our stuff? We put it full of saprocytic bacteria and mycelium. Sometimes when you open up a bag of Earthshine, it's like white, and people are like, "Oh, it's moldy. I need to go get a refund." I get that all the time. I'm like, "Wait, that's the stuff that you pay $50 a pound for, and you're gonna go return that right now? Crazy.
Yeah.
Give that to me, and I will go distill it into something stronger and sell it for $50 a pound." Yeah. But I'm giving it to everyone for free, basically. So if you ever open up Earthshine, it's fuzzy or white, that's really good. Okay, it's not going to hurt anything. Mix it up. You just got super concentrated biologically active stuff. And the Earthshine's 3 main uses: you recycle your soil with it, you add it in the fall, it dissolves your root ball. Yeah, it dissolves your root ball over the wintertime. So if you do an outdoor garden, you just cut the plant down about 3 inches below the soil, leave the root ball intact, heavily top dress the Earthshine, till it under, water thoroughly.
How heavy per yard would you say?
About 5 to 7 pounds. Not very much, right? 5 pounds.
That's a 5-pound bag, right?
This is a 2-pound bag.
2 pound.
It's fluffy
Big
stuff,
one,
but
big
yeah.
one.
Yeah, so we have buckets of it too. They're 30-pound buckets, and I mean, one bucket's gonna treat you, 5-6 yards. So, I mean, goes a long way. Soil costs $100 to $200 a yard depending where you get it from. So if one bucket for $120 can take care of 6 yards, you just saved yourself a lot of money. Yeah. Plus you packed it full of biology for the wintertime, and it dissolves all of the nutrients that are still locked in your roots. It's free. There's free nutrients right there. I just saved you some money. Right. But and then so that's a great way to do it. So the springtime, your soil is nice and rich and lush. I also love adding this as a compost heat booster. This product alone will amplify bacteria 100-fold because of the carbon matrix.
Yeah. So you can feed that carbon on your composting.
Yes. This will accelerate your compost piles. Yeah. So if you have compost piles in your yard, I just like to dust it. Like, you just get a nice coating on your compost pile, get it wet, let it go. Till it up a little bit occasionally. I do that probably once a month in my compost piles. It severely speeds up my compost piles. So a 12-month compost pile turns into a 6-month compost pile. It's crazy. And again, I can't take credit for all this, guys. This is invented 1,500 years ago, before we were all born, and it was last used roughly 500 years ago. And now it's kind of coming back into
we love
the picture.
Seeing that. And like, Tim over there has got his smart technology, which is the same thing, studying ancient ways of doing things and using our technology now to bring those back.
They survived without technology. They did it very well.
Us as growers, we love that too.
Well, yeah, and we were talking about earlier today on another chat that we did with these two animals. We talked about how do people think the Mayans, for example, right? They had city-states, right? And this is just multiple cities that had over 100,000 people in them. Right. And people don't consider that. Like, do you know how much food you have to produce for 100,000 people in a 10-mile by 2-mile city, like they have there? Right. That means you have to have sophisticated agricultural systems that rely on multiple crop cycles. Yeah. And you can't just be waiting for the gods to throw down water, right? That's not what they were doing. They knew what they were doing. Yeah. They were incorporating these types of practices and more advanced practices than I've even gotten to yet.
Well, the whole base of civilization, period, was agriculture. When we stopped being nomadic, it was because we learned how to grow our food.
Mm-hmm. Oh, someone a little bit more wiser than us at the time taught us that.
Yeah.
They taught us how to make streets. They taught us how to make irrigation canals.
Right.
That just all of a sudden appeared in a 100-year period in our timeline. That doesn't make sense. Someone just
Right.
came up with this. They were taught by someone else higher than us. So,
Regarding this char, I was watching Live Fear Die the other night, and one of the guys was making it.
Yeah.
He charred the wood, and then he mixed leaves and stuff with it, let it sit, and then, eventually put it in his garden.
Mhm.
I thought, what the hell, I never heard of this shit before.
yeah, I mean that would be traditional terra preta. So terra preta would be multiple carbon sources. You have burned carbon right from wood, then you have composted carbon from plant matter, and then sometimes they'll throw in a little bit of bonus stuff like some fish or some type of protein. And that's their terra preta, and it's great. It all depends on how you want to. Any of these products can be produced in 100 different ways depending on what you're trying to get out of it. Oil content, protein content, mineralization, food like source. So. So moving on, I don't know how long I have to talk. So
As long as you want.
All day, Mark, all day.
One more question.
Sure.
You're talking pure water, right? That's what you had here.
yeah, so purified
What does
water.
that mean to you?
So for us, that means you get a good filter that's gonna take out most of the impurities. No chlorine, no chloramines, no fluoride, no heavy copper, no boron.
Okay.
Basically.
Yeah, I got a under the sink type of water filter, carbon block type. Of
Carbon's a great filter, so that's what I would
So that'd be
recommend.
satisfactory then?
Mhm,
I don't
yeah.
have to use distilled water?
No. A carbon filter should be great.
Okay.
Um,
Rainwater?
Rainwater, no, I don't.
If it comes off of a metal roof, what do you think?
I would say if you're out in the country, maybe, but I still don't know what's
Oh,
up
not
in
in
the
town, yeah. Okay.
like what's up in the air. Like,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
I'm not one of those guys who's saying there's people spraying jet fumes all in the airs everywhere, but like I still think that there's a lot of pollutants in the air.
Oh, yeah.
They get blown by the trade winds,
Yeah.
and so the water comes down, and I think our water is the most polluted it's ever been in our civilization's history. That being said, rainwater could be great. Let's just use it the right way. Let's put it through a basic filter. Capture as much rainwater as you can. The government's going to try to stop you, but capture as much as you can, filter it,
Ways
and
around that.
there's ways
Well
around it.
water in grounds or filter.
Yeah.
Well water is great. Make sure it's pH balanced a little bit because some of the wells I've seen out here. Yeah, and that, from coming from California, I was shocked. Seeing some stuff around 8.5 up here, 8, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
What's causing that? But yeah, it's probably something in the soil.
My tap water is like 5.1, 5.2. I mean,
That's acidic.
when I use the pH paper, and when I'm making my mixes, I take it's the filtered tap water, okay? And I I've added some stuff to it, that's right. Okay.
What
What I gotta do is test the water before I put it in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, and the stuff, most of the fertilizers in the world will drop your pH for the most part, a little bit down. I think your pH should be anywhere between 6 and 6.5 would be great. 6.6 is fine too, but I mean, like, if you're having an issue with your water being too acidic, you could take a little of this Earthshine, shake it up in your water, and it's gonna bring the pH up to normal.
Yeah.
This Earthshine's about an 8.0.
I was going to ask what all the.
So we pH balanced all the veg and bloom products for you. These are at 6.8. And the flower finishers 6.6 roughly. Now we're getting to the Mycorrhizae products. These guys are like a perfect pH because we're doing a little bit of seaweed with some humic acid and zeolite. So that should be a really, really nice pH for your plants. That's the one products we haven't talked about yet. We have an ultrafine, right, a micronized microbial, and we have a granular. I call the ultrafine a microbial because when you just demolish mycorrhizae to the point of it being soluble, it's more of the hyphal fragments and the beneficial bacteria that you're really getting in your garden at that point. We produce spores in a granular form, so I mean, unless we extract them out, which is very expensive, which we can do, but people don't want to pay that price for extracted pure spores in a soluble medium. So we use a ball mill and grind it to a finer than sand, but not super, super, super fine, because we're trying to keep some of that high flow fragment intact and some of the spores intact, which we do.
Yeah.
That's on the first couple pages, by the way, guys. I'm not following my own guide here. So we're talking about the premium ultrafine, right? So the ultrafine, it starts in the granular form, right? So we start in the granular form. We grow mycorrhizae in greenhouses in vivo, which means the fancy word of saying in situ, in beds, in, like in the ground with the host plant. So we use zeolite, which is ionically charged rock mineral, versus clay. Some people like clay, some people like zeolite. I like zeolite. That's what we're going to use because I said so. A lot of people use clay. I mean, I just prefer zeolite. I think it interacts better with the dry amendments in biochar. So we have to make everything agree in this line. So we like that. The seaweed, we're using the seaweed extract, right, which is the creme de la creme of kelp, right? So you extract the cream out of the kelp, and that's what we use. It's that really black looking dark green sooty stuff that you can buy in a bag that's $120 for 5 pounds, the expensive stuff. We think that has great mineralization, it has cytokines, it has amino acids, it has protein, it has the nectar of life from the ocean. You have monatomic elements in there, gold, silver, palladium, right? Rhodium. And then, the humic acid, we're using a very high-end 90% concentrate soluble humic acid. So you're getting mostly humic acid, less ground up rocks. You have to say it's from Leonardite because California Department of Food and Agriculture hates me. They have a personal vendetta against me, so I have to say it that way. The humic acid we buy from Native Americans. There's in New Mexico, there's a Native American settlement out there that mine and own the land, and they mine the humic acid, and we buy it from them consciously. We pay more money for it, but we make sure that it's providing lifestyle, it's a life, a living wage, pretty much everything for that culture. We want them to succeed. Absolutely. And we want them to be a part of our culture, so we try to take care of them that way. The mycorrhizae specifically, guys, is something that I had to approach because there's not that many sources in the world for mycorrhizae. It's one of the rarest commodities out there. There's only 5 companies in all of North America that make mycorrhizae, and there's probably, there's a bunch clustered in India and China. I just don't trust them as much in terms of the QA/QC, which we do in America. So, not to say they don't make good mycorrhizae, it's just QA/QC is huge for California Department of Ag and importing and exporting, so you just it's better just to get your hands on it yourself.
More hoops.
Yeah. So, most mycorrhizae that we know of is produced outdoors. Ours is produced indoors in a climate-controlled greenhouse. On a multi-species host crop, which is unique, right? Which is what you need, right? Because we're mimicking nature, we're polycropping, okay? So we're growing 4 species. Basically what happens when you grow mycorrhizae, unless you're in a lab setting, they want to be, a couple of them want to get together, right? And some of them will be more dominant, like interatices, but then you'll still get, Claris or Deserticola or some of the other ones joining the bunch because they're just kind of there. They just kind of want to be there, And a lot of pure inoculums are not pure inoculums, right? Because who are you buying pure inoculum from? You can't. If you're making your own mycorrhizae, you have to go isolate the mycorrhizae, harvest it, and hope the lab tech, got it right. And for the most part, they will. But if they miss one spore, that's going to be a poly blend, right? But that's why every single product in the market that wasn't done in vitro has more than one species in it. And if they're just claiming one species, it's probably because of regulatory problems. You know, we can all, because you could get a microscope and you can do a staining and say, okay, yeah, there's interradices there, but there's actually 1 or 2 other ones there too. It doesn't hurt anything, it's great. It's a bonus for you guys because you're paying for this and you're getting this too.
Right.
So, you know, we grow Mycorrhizae to the strictest and most rigorous standards in vivo. You know, we make sure to do up to 25 test analyses on the mycorrhizae while it's growing when it's harvested to try to make sure that we have continuity and that the spores are the highest quality spores we can get to. And mycorrhizae, you know, everyone likes to touch a gram and go test it. The problem is that's not representative of the whole batch. I mean, think about a spore, right? I'm telling a spore, you got to stick on this gram of material, this rock dust. You need to stick there, and I'm going to sell it to you. And every gram has to be the same. Right. A lot of times you have this, you're going down the road and this is going on, right? Or you're sitting on a table playing music and it's vibrating, right?
Sure.
So the spores, since they're so small, can vibrate to the bottom or to the top, right? So we always ask people, when you're going to use mycorrhizae, try to just shake it up a little bit, try to mix it up a little bit so that there's no settling or anything like that happening. Because sometimes you get to the bottom and you have gold, right? You just have so many spores, and at the top you have less spores. So try to make sure that you can kind of homogenize it, because after it leaves my warehouse, I don't know what you guys do with it. You know, you could stick it on your guitar and play with it, I don't know, but something's gonna, like, you know, you can put it on a shaker, put it on the washing machine, you know, so you wanna make sure that the homogeneity of the mycorrhizae, you know, every time you apply, you wanna make sure that it's all nice and good mixed up. Just like it'll separate, right? I mean, it's like when you have a liquid, you gotta shake it before use. So,
Do the herd twerk.
Yep.
The herd twerk?
The herd twerk. So, so that, I mean, that's primarily the line. We have a few products, sneak peek, coming out next year. One of them is a food grade soluble molasses flour, right? Which is low in sulfur, and it's not this typical type of garbage molasses that's out there in the world. We're mixing that with a different type of seaweed. It's a Red Sea algae concentrate. Yep, we're mixing it with trace minerals, brewer's malt, brewer's yeast, and cellulose.
Wow.
So that product's going to be for people that want to enhance the flavor profile, if they're pressing oils, things like that. If you want to add it to your tea,
This is another dry amendment? Wow.
It'll be dry soluble.
Very cool.
So you can top dress it, mix it in water, mix it in tea. Everything you can see here, we do that with, right?
Yeah.
I want to give you 3 application modes. I want to not sell you water if I can get away from it. I mean, you know, in California, we just got out of a massive drought. So, you know, that's why we're never going to go towards a liquid baseline being from California, because we're so water scarce that, you know, I just don't want to do that to the water table down there anymore.
You guys aren't out of the woods yet.
No, we're not. So I'm going to stick to my guns and say, you know, try to pull the water from your property.
Yeah.
You know, try to harvest water and not waste water, and, you know, got to use gray water. Use gray water. You know, so any major questions at all?
Now, with a high pH in say my well water, it fluctuates 8.8 to 9.1, 9.2. Would you just use the pH down every time? Any of your products would help that, or dropping it, or just keep top dressing and hope for the best, and it's kind of even out with your 6.5, 6?
Well, I mean, all those things are kind of correct. I mean, you could use some humic acids to get it down.
So say microbiome nourished.
Yeah, I mean,
That's a
some people use phosphoric acid. Some people use, I mean, there's phosphoric acid, right? Which is what a lot of people use for pH down.
I got to that. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the water also, we got to kind of just define, why is the pH high of your water? You know, what's dissolved in there?
It's coming straight from the river, coming straight from the mountains.
Okay. So there's got to be something up there, something dissolved in there that's going to
And I'm
pH high.
surrounded by clay.
Okay.
Surrounded by clay.
Yeah, I mean, I would like your pH to be, get your pH down a little bit, maybe throw a little humic acid in there, and then you could apply these, and this will get your pH down to a normal point. I mean, I'm just not a huge fan of the pH up and pH down, but I mean, phosphoric acid's been working for a long time, you know?
Right, down phosphoric.
Yeah. You know, people use vinegar. sometimes to do different things, right? I mean, a lot of these organic pH up and pH downs are either vinegar based or, you know, I mean, there's a few other secrets and tips and tricks that they're going to do.
I
I
was
should,
just seeing if you had any.
yeah, I mean,
Sounds pretty good.
yeah, those are pretty good. I mean, I know that the trick for sure is if your pH is really low, which some water tables come out at 5.2, whatever, you really just shake up some of this in there. You know, a tablespoon per 5 gallons, that'll get it nice and up at around 6. A couple more tablespoons, get it higher.
Is it not true that in some cases, like, I don't know if it's like in his case, but iron, if your pH is one way or the other, and I forget, I remember reading it, but I forget about it. If your pH of your water is one way or the other too far, the iron will not stay in the solution?
It can. I mean, a lot of elements. I mean, like if you take some distilled water, right, and you throw in salt, right, or sea salt, like people have done, right. And a lot of these nutrients out there in the world are actually based on salts or sea salts, right. If you get it to 10.6, all of a sudden it'll start snowing in your jar. And what looked like clear water will start snowing, which means it's dropping a lot of those metals out of solution. You know, palladium, rhodium, some iron, all that stuff. And there's a toxicity above that. So, you know, once you get high up there, I mean, you're getting real toxic on the alkaline side. And then when you start getting low, you know, on the acid side, that's when the salts have gone the other direction, right? You're adding salt-based minerals that are dropping you all the way down to like 4.5, you know, and it's acidic.
You go to large restaurants, they'll have big old salt buckets that they filter the water before it goes through a filter to pull all the metals out so they have better, cleaner filters.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
I know that from working at Red Lobster. So,
that's chill. No, I mean, that's a good, I mean, it's tips and tricks to make sure that, you know, people are drinking good water, or your plants need good water too. So a tiny bit of salt in your water provides electrolytes, which is great. Makes it more absorbable, right? Too much salt's not so good, you know? It's a balance of life, right? And where you are. The atmosphere provides something to us, guys. You know, there's stuff in the atmosphere floating around. We're being bombarded by different types of particles all day long. So
different sea levels, different.
Yep. So different atmospheres.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Do you have a question?
If you've been using the Nectar of the Gods line and you're currently in mid to late flower, is it still safe and beneficial to start using the middle of your line like the flower finisher?
Yeah, I think the flower finisher works well. I mean, Scott and I from Nectar for the Gods talked about it. I mean, it seems like there's nothing in this line that conflicts with either of our lines. I mean, we recommend in transition to use the Herculean Harvest, the liquid bone, because it's a great product and it's easy, you know. I don't think the flower finisher is going to have any conflicts with anything that's in his. I mean, just from the ingredients list, I mean.
What would be the strong pull to decide to use it at this point?
So in your flowers, I mean, depends on like how they're stacking, the density levels. Are you having trouble because the humidity is too high, you're close to the ocean, you're finishing too late and so it's not densifying up where you're getting mold or mildew? Flower finisher will help you finish about 5 days sooner, and it'll make it harder, more rock-like. You'll get more weight to it at the end. So
it would typically just make a more like dense, snug compared to a fluffy.
Yep. You lose a lot less when you cut them down. You know, that's what, because you know we did the flower finisher, all of our trial work in Oregon because in Northern California, you know, people need this product too, but not as much as in these environments that have more moisture in them or that the season's shorter, you know. So we've noticed a really, really tremendous result from the flower hardener. I mean, for the cost, you can't beat it. The application, I mean, it's a couple bucks per application to the plant, and you're only applying it 4 or 5 times. So I mean, $10 to $15 per plant for the whole cycle, and you got yourself a few hundred or a few thousand extra dollars, depending on how you look at it. So, yeah.
Cool, thanks.
The mango juice and the beer, I don't think you mentioned it.
Oh, okay. So in our compost teas, you know, like I said before, I don't really like the molasses that's out there. Most of the molasses is actually more of a problem because people go too heavy on it, or they top dress the molasses and it's kind of like a rough molasses that has a lot of impurities. It also attracts a lot of insects. So I'm more of the fan of doing mango juice or some type of tropical juice, right? Because it's not as sweet, well, as molasses would be, and there's enzymes contained in mango juice and papaya juice. So you just put a little bit of that in your tea, just enough to get the microbes kicked off because they want some sugar in there. And you also get the enzyme boost from the juice that was there, and the carbs. So beer also is the most carbohydrate dense liquid out there. So a stout beer being probably one of the better ones. So if you add stout beer to your compost tea, it makes the microbes have to work to break down the carbs into sugars, which the bad microbes, they're like, fuck this, I'm out. I don't want to do that, right? But the good microbes are like, well, I need to work to get this sugar so that I can get big and strong and help the plant. It's just kind of like a good guy versus bad guy scenario. The bad microbes are like, they're opportunistic. You know, they're like, oh my God, there's a lot of sugar here. I'm just going to colonize, you know? So the good bacteria, because we put that bacteria there, we know what it's doing there. So they're just going to start, all they have to do is break down the carbs and the sugars, right, to live. That's what they're going to do. So beer is great, and there's yeast in beer, right? They can come back to life. That's cool. Soil yeast is great. So
What about grains?
grains, yeah. So I mean, like that sweetener we just talked about, we're adding brewer's grains, brewer's malt into there. Same idea. You know, it's a good idea to do that. Doesn't have as much yeast in it though, you know, but we can live without
But
that.
it's a good replacement.
It's a good replacement for sure.
Right.
And, okay, is there going to be a difference between nectar, and mango juice? I mean, you know, you see nectar, I've never seen mango juice. I've seen mango nectar. But
Nectar's gonna be the same thing. I mean, because it's like a pulp-based mango juice, because you can't really. Most people just don't extract it down, you know, that far. They get the pulp with the juice. It's all good. You
Is
know?
that the difference between juice and nectar then? You get
Roughly, I think
more-
so.
More pulp in the nectar?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the way I've understood it, at least.
But would you make it a point to look for the juice rather than the nectar?
No, I think the nectar would be more beneficial, more carbohydrate dense,
All right.
and some minerals that are contained in
Okay.
the pulp. You know.
How long does it last? Forever? Then is there a shelf life to it once you open it up?
We tend to stick to the California guidelines of 2 years after you open it up. You know, you have to use it by. Keep it in a cool, dry place. Reseal it. Make sure there's no moisture. Make sure it doesn't freeze, because it's gonna freeze and expand. What is that gonna do to your body? Probably kill you. Microbes are gonna die. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Any mistakes people make you've noticed using the thing, or pitfalls?
Yeah, a lot of times people will take the veg and bloom and just throw a cup into water and then try to water and go, oh, it's not solubilizing in water. Well, it's not soluble. It's fast, medium, and slow chain release. It's a rough, medium, and fine grind. So some stuff is soluble, some stuff is almost soluble, some stuff's not even close to soluble.
Better top dress.
Great
or
progress.
compost.
Yeah,
Water.
better top dress. I mean, because when you top dress, it means every time you water after that, you're refeeding your soil, right? Because it's re-irrigating and then refeeding. So, because a lot of the bottle guys are like, well, every time I feed water to the plant, I always want to water because I want to put some feed in it. Well, you're already doing that with this. So every time you top dress, that's one feed. You compost tea, that's one feed. And you irrigate that week, it's feeding again because it's re-irrigating that top dress. So you're still doing the same thing, it's just doing it in the soil versus you going like this and like that, and then like this, and then, you know.
So you're preferring top dress as opposed to tea, or what?
No,
What do you
you,
say?
we're talking about when you mix liquid nutrients in a bucket so that you feed every single day.
Yeah.
And so we're saying that with this system, you don't do that. You just, when you top dress, the feed chart says you top dress once a week, you know, and the reason why you only have to feed once a week with this program is because every time you water after that,
Yeah.
the compost tea gets wet, I mean the top dress gets wet again and refeeds the soil again. And then it kind of runs out after a week to 10 days, so that's why you top dress again.
Okay.
Versus the traditional method is you put 4 to 5 mils of this, that, and the other every time you feed, which could be 5, 6, 7 times a week. It's just a different work strategy, you know? This is top dress and compost tea versus, you know, so.
Well, I've noticed with, I use Nature's Gods, and I will get, it'll solid on me on the top.
Just the bottom of the kernel.
So, but, which is, it just gets me to cultivate.
Mm-hmm.
So I cultivate once every 3 or 4 days,
Mm-hmm.
Get yourself a ticket.
and it's not a problem. But otherwise, before I did that,
I don't get to.
so that's why I was wondering about top dressing, because it kind of like closes it up, and the water would basically sit on the top. It takes a while. I mean, it'd go down, but it didn't go down like,
Yeah, and I mean, what we typically do, what I do, is I have a little hand rake with me whenever I'm doing the top dress, and I usually put a sack, the farmer's sack, I put the top dress in here, so I'm going behind each plant, I'm top dressing, and I have my little rake, and I just go like this.
There you go.
An inch, right, just an inch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's called low-till farming practices.
Okay.
GreenGro is a fan of no-till. I do low-till, because, for me, I just gotta do a little bit, right? I don't do a heavy till because I don't want to destroy all the microbes I've built over the last few years, but a low till approach is what I do.
We get some pretty big.
low till,
plants, too,
you're talking
sometimes.
that 1 inch, is that what you mean by low till?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No more than 3 inches is low till.
Okay.
And GreenGro, you can say that GreenGro coined that term of low till, but that's my technique, is
Okay.
low till. Low impact tilling on the soil.
Yeah.
Cool.
Any more questions?
Probably after I leave.
You guys can find us on Instagram and DM us for any questions you want to, @TheGreenGro.